I think I messed up really bad. Something's following me. The door groaned open, the sound swallowed by the damp, stale air. Blackwood Sanatorium. Even the name tasted like ash in my mouth. I took a shaky breath and adjusted the focus on my camera. Another brick in the wall of my reputation as Ethan Bellwether, the guy who went where others wouldn't. Havenwood was dying, had been for years. Factories shuttered, houses boarded up, leaving behind ghosts of a life I never knew. Blackwood was just the biggest, most rotting ghost of them all. Locals whispered stories, patients driven mad, cruel doctors, experiments that went too far. Perfect backdrop for a photographer craving something more than abandoned playgrounds. Maya, bless her logical anthropology student heart, had tried to talk me out of it. Ethan, Sarah Jenkins went missing near there. The police are practically begging people to stay away. Sarah Jenkins, another urban explorer, disappeared a few weeks ago, probably just got lost or worse. But the thought lingered, a cold knot in my stomach. I pushed it down, the thrill of the forbidden, a potent drug. Inside, the air was thick with the stench of mildew and something else, something vaguely metallic like old blood. Moonlight filtered through broken windows, painting eerie patterns on the peeling wallpaper. Each room was a tableau of decay, rusted beds, overturned chairs, medical charts ripped and scattered. I snapped photos, the flash momentarily piercing the gloom. The shadows danced, playing tricks on my eyes. I kept telling myself it was just the atmosphere, the stories, the weight of the place pressing down on me. After an hour, I found it. A hidden room behind a loose section of plasterboard in what must have been the old surgery. The room was smaller than the others, almost a cell. And in the center, on a dusty pedestal, sat a music box. It was ornate, crafted from dark wood and inlaid with silver. The carvings were unsettling, twisted faces, skeletal figures, symbols I didn't recognize. I ran my gloved hand over the surface, a strange energy humming beneath my fingertips. I knew I shouldn't. Every instinct screamed at me to leave it alone. But the lure was too strong. I flipped open the lid. A melody tinkled out, thin and reedy like a child's lullaby played on a broken piano. It was unsettling, dissonant, sending shivers down my spine. As the music played, the air in the room grew noticeably colder. Then a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye. I whipped around, heart hammering, but there was nothing there, just shadows. I slammed the lid shut, the music abruptly cut off. The silence that followed was even more oppressive than before. I took a few deep breaths, trying to calm my racing pulse. "Okay, Ethan," I muttered to myself. "Just your imagination. Spooky place, spooky music." I took a few more photos of the music box and the room, then quickly packed up my gear. I needed to get out of there. The walk back to my car felt longer, more fraught with peril. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle in the bushes outside sent a jolt of fear through me. I kept glancing over my shoulder, convinced I was being watched. I finally reached my car, fumbled with the keys, and practically dove inside. I locked the doors, started the engine, and didn't stop driving until I was miles away from Havenwood. Back in my apartment, I tried to shake off the feeling of unease. I told myself it was just a case of nerves, that I'd let the stories get to me. But the image of the music box, the unsettling melody, and that fleeting shadow kept replaying in my mind. I started editing the photos, hoping it would distract me. The pictures from the other parts of the sanatorium were just as I expected, depressing, but ultimately harmless. But when I got to the photos of the hidden room, a chill ran down my spine. In one of the photos, taken just before I opened the music box, there was something else in the room. A dark shape, barely visible in the shadows, lurking just behind the pedestal. It wasn't there in any of the other photos, and I didn't remember seeing it at the time. I zoomed in on the image, trying to make out the details. It looked like a figure, tall and gaunt, with long, spindly limbs. Its face was obscured by shadow, but I could sense malevolence. I shut down my computer, my hands shaking. I couldn't explain it. The rational part of my brain screamed that it was a trick of the light, a distortion in the photograph. But deep down, I knew it was something more. That night, I had the first nightmare. I was back in the hidden room, standing in front of the music box. The melody started to play, and the figure emerged from the shadows. It reached for me, its touch like ice. I woke up screaming, covered in sweat. The next day, I called Maya. I told her everything about the music box, the shadow in the photo, the nightmare. I expected her to tell me I was crazy, but she listened intently, her expression growing increasingly concerned. "Ethan, this sounds bad," she said finally. "I've heard stories about Blackwood, local legends. They say there's something that feeds on the fear and despair trapped inside those walls." She told me about a local myth, a malevolent entity that was drawn to objects imbued with negative energy, objects like the music box. It could latch onto a person, feeding off their fear and paranoia, driving them mad. "It's just a story, Ethan," she said quickly, "but maybe it's worth looking into." I spent the next few days researching the history of Blackwood Sanatorium, scouring old newspaper articles and historical archives. I found stories of strange occurrences, unexplained deaths, and patients who claimed to be tormented by unseen forces. The more I learned, the more convinced I became that I had unleashed something terrible. I felt like I was being watched constantly. Shadows flickered at the edge of my vision. I heard whispers when I was alone. My anxiety skyrocketed. Then the photos started changing. I would open a file on my computer and the images would be subtly altered. Faces in the background would be distorted, replaced with grotesque masks. The shadows would deepen, becoming more menacing. The music box would appear in photos where it shouldn't be. I knew I was losing it. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. I jumped at every sound, every movement. I was a prisoner in my own apartment, consumed by fear. Detective Harding called me in for questioning. He was investigating Sarah Jenkins' disappearance, and he knew I had been exploring the areas around Blackwood. He was polite but firm. He suspected I knew more than I was letting on. I told him about the music box, the shadow, the nightmares. He looked at me with a mixture of skepticism and concern. "Mr. Bellwether," he said, "I appreciate your cooperation, but I'm dealing with a missing person case here. I need facts, not ghost stories." I understood his skepticism, but I was desperate. I showed him the altered photos. He examined them closely, but his expression remained unchanged. "These could be doctored, Mr. Bellwether," he said. "I need something more concrete." I left the police station feeling defeated. No one believed me. I was on my own. Then I found Sarah Jenkins' journal. It was hidden inside the music box. I had somehow missed it before. It was small, leather-bound, and filled with her neat, precise handwriting. The first few entries were typical urban exploration fair descriptions of abandoned buildings, reflections on the beauty of decay. But as I read further, the tone shifted. She wrote about feeling watched, about hearing whispers, about having nightmares. She described finding a hidden room in Blackwood Sanatorium and a music box. Her last entry was frantic, barely legible. She wrote about being pursued by something that was feeding on her fear. She wrote about the music box being a prison, and she had unwittingly released it. The last line was chilling. "It knows my name." I knew then that I had to go back to Blackwood. I had to find a way to stop whatever I had unleashed. I called Maya. "I need your help," I said. "I know it sounds crazy, but I think I know what happened to Sarah Jenkins." Maya met me at my apartment. She looked pale and worried. I showed her the journal and she read it in silence. "Ethan," she said, "this is terrifying, but if it's true, we have to do something." We spent the next few hours poring over the journal, looking for clues. Sarah Jenkins had mentioned a specific type of flower, a rare species that grew only in the deepest parts of the Blackwood forest. She believed it had some kind of power, that it could repel the entity. We decided to go back to Blackwood. We knew it was dangerous, but we didn't see any other choice. We arrived at the sanatorium just before dawn. The air was thick with fog, and the silence was broken only by the sound of our own breathing. We moved cautiously, our senses on high alert. We searched for hours, following Sarah Jenkins' descriptions of the flower's location. The deeper we went into the forest, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The trees seemed to twist and contort, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The air grew colder, and I could feel that familiar presence lurking nearby. Finally, we found it. A small patch of the rare flowers, their petals a vibrant, almost unnatural shade of blue. They seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. As I reached for one of the flowers, a voice whispered in my ear, "You can't stop me." I whirled around, but there was nothing there, just the fog and the trees. "Ethan, what's wrong?" Meyer asked, her voice trembling. "It's here," I said. "I can feel it." The fog began to swirl around us, thickening until we could barely see each other. The temperature plummeted. A low, guttural growl echoed through the trees. Then the shadows began to move. They stretched and contorted, taking on grotesque shapes. They lunged at us, their touch like ice. We fought back, waving the flowers, their petals emitting a faint, shimmering light. The shadows recoiled, hissing and shrieking. We managed to drive them back, but we knew it was only a temporary reprieve. The entity was still there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for its chance. We gathered as many of the flowers as we could carry and fled back to the sanatorium. We needed to find a way to destroy the music box, to sever the connection between the entity and this world. We found the hidden room, the music box still sitting on its pedestal. The melody started to play, faint but insistent. I lunged for the music box, intending to smash it to pieces. But as I reached for it, the figure materialized in front of me. It was taller than I had imagined, its limbs impossibly long and thin. Its face was still obscured by shadow, but I could feel its burning gaze fixed on me. It reached out, its touch like 1,000 needles piercing my skin. I screamed, recoiling from its touch. The flowers in my hand began to wilt and wither. Maya threw herself in front of me, wielding the remaining flowers like a shield. The entity recoiled, hissing in pain. "Ethan, destroy the music box," she screamed. I scrambled to my feet, grabbed a heavy metal pipe from the corner of the room and swung it with all my might. The pipe connected with the music box, shattering it into 1,000,000 pieces. The melody stopped. The air grew still. The entity shrieked, a sound of pure anguish, and then vanished. The fog began to dissipate. The temperature returned to normal. The shadows receded. We stood there, panting, our bodies trembling, unsure if it was truly over. We gathered the remains of the music box and burned them, scattering the ashes to the wind. We told Detective Harding everything, showing him the journal and the flowers. He was still skeptical, but he couldn't deny the evidence. He launched a full-scale investigation of Blackwood Sanatorium, uncovering a history of abuse and neglect that was even more horrifying than the local legends. He never found Sarah Jenkins' body, but he closed the case, ruling her death as a result of foul play. I thought it was over. I thought I could finally move on with my life, but I was wrong. The nightmares returned, more vivid and terrifying than before. I saw the entity's face now, a grotesque mask of pain and rage. I heard its voice in my head, whispering my name. I knew it was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for its chance to claim me. I tried to rebuild my life, to forget what had happened, but I couldn't. The fear was always there, a constant companion. One night I was standing in front of my bathroom mirror, brushing my teeth. I looked up and saw my reflection staring back at me, but it wasn't my reflection. It was the entity. Its face was inches from mine, its eyes burning with malevolence. It smiled, a slow, cruel smile, and then it whispered, "I'm here."